So I think that you know what you're doing when it comes to using a hand grinder and taking care of it. But why do they keep burning up? We're going to address some very common bad practices that could keep you from ruining your equipment and try to save you from doing this. Let's do it. We're going to talk about how cords get cut, how cheap extension cords can ruin your equipment, how to wind the cords that are attached to your grinders. We're going to try to reduce the cup wheels getting stuck on the grinders. I've got a little bonus tip of advice that if you stick around to the end, I'll show you how probably more of you are damaging your grinders than you even realize. And I've got one last little tip that can also save you money in the long run. Stick around to the end and let's save you some money and make your equipment last longer. It's good to know how much is a grinder going to cost you. Now we're talking about a 7-inch hand grinder. We're not talking about shrouds, cup wheels that go on it, just the grinder. If you go out a cheap one and you find a really good deal, you're probably going to spend in the neighborhood of $100, and you could spend all the way up to, we'll say $400 plus for a tool that's going to get used and abused on a daily basis in a very dirty environment. Probably want to hit somewhere in the middle of the road so you can get good use, good durability out of it, but you're not breaking the bank. Now, grinders that I use cost around $250 just for the grinder. Now, if you spent $250 and you had to replace that grinder once a month because of just abuse, you're spending around $3 grand a year just to have a 7-inch grinder on your truck. That's pretty stupid. If you can get one 7-inch grinder to last or at least 1 year, you've taken that to $250 a year. So, you know, $250 a month or $12 to $13 a month for how much use you're getting out of it. Your choice. Specifically, the one we're going to be using is the Metabo W24-230 MVT. This specific grinder and these specific tips, it's gotten everything to where I'm spending less and less on grinder replacement, and they just are lasting. Let's face it, one of the most common sense things that can ruin a grinder is just not paying attention and running over the cord with the grinder. But if you teach yourself, or you teach the people that are going to be using the grinders to keep the cords working behind them so they're ahead of the cord, then you're going to reduce the amount of times that someone runs over them. Someone's getting in a hurry, they're moving around, they spin around, and they just keep grinding and they don't move their cords. Teach good habits, keep the cords behind you. Number 2, cheap extension cords and loose connections. If you're running thin, long extension cords to equipment that's pulling any amount of amps, it's going to be super hard on the equipment and it's going to be super hard on the cord. And then that's going to generate heat. Heat is bad, especially when it gets so hot that it can melt the connections. I only run 10 gauge extension cords. Now, this is overkill, but I don't ever have to worry about any of my guys or myself grabbing an extension cord that's too light and then having to pay the price by replacing an expensive piece of equipment. Plus, whenever you're trying to grind and you're moving around grinding concrete, you're not staying in one place, you're moving around the perimeter. When you're doing that, let's look at this one. You've got your male and you've got your female connections, and you're going to pull on that connection as you're moving around. Now, some people are going to try to tie them together. There's some different kinds of tools out there that will try to hold them together. But the best solution that I've found to stop this are these cords right here. Now, this is from a company called Badass Extension Cords. I know, awesome name, right? But that's actually what it's called. So these are Badass Extension Cords. You can go to, I think it's badassextensioncords.com or something like that. But if you look at these ends, they've got a quick connect that's spring loaded. Once you plug your tool in, it's going to hold it in place so that you don't develop a loose connection right there. Now, if you've ever noticed the male and the female ends on your cords are getting burnout, blackened, charred, melted, all of these things are from running too many amps through it for too long and it's got too much resistance. It'd be like trying to have all this water going down a channel, but the channel's too narrow. All that water is going to try to push and go out every different direction. Electricity does the same thing. it doesn't have enough room to flow through without causing problems. And so it's going to have resistance, it's going to heat up, it's going to melt your plug-ins, and it could melt the prongs right off the end of your cords. If you've got something quick locked into it and it's not going to come out, as long as you seat it in there correctly, then you're not going to have that issue. Problem gone. Put it in, click it in place, make sure it's locked, make sure it's seated. You can pull on it. I wouldn't recommend just continuing to yank on them, but you can pull on it and it's going to stay in place. One thing that you need to also be aware of is don't use the tool to pull. You like that movement? Don't use this to pull the extension cord around. These cords are heavy. They get tangled up with other cords. People are walking on them. Things are happening, right? It's a job site. So if you're yanking here, you're going to be breaking the connection inside the tool. Don't do that. Take a minute, reach back, grab the extension cord behind the connector, and pull the extension cord. Number 3, winding the cords too tight. And this is when we're talking about putting the tool away. You've seen the guys, they pull it up as hard as they can, and then they do this number. It looks pretty when it gets put up. You're damaging it right here. This is not going to be a good habit to be in. Stop pulling your cords too tight. We don't just throw everything into a big toolbox because obviously that can damage more than just the cords. Since we've got enough room, we're just going to do a loose loop. Get that loose loop nice and loose. And then I'm just draping it over the handle. It's getting put up just like this. When we get ready to go to work, set it down, pull it off, throw it out, ready to go. Number 3, not using the provided washers that come with the grinder, or using something to go in between this and this. I'm showing you this without a shroud just to show you the placement of things. Always make sure you've got a guard on these things or a dust shroud. But if you're not using your spacers correctly, then whenever you put on the wheel and it generates too much heat, the way that metal's going to heat up and cool down, it's going to have a high chance of getting locked onto the grinder. When it does, the different things that I've seen people try to do to get this off, I've seen where the segments are on here or where the holes are, people take chisels, screwdrivers, hammers. They've got them pinned down and they're beating on them on the ground. You're tearing up bearings, you're being very hard on the grinder. So you need to find a way to get these off. 1, try to keep them from binding up. 2, find a way to get them off that's going to be less aggressive and less violent. I know, what fun is that? But we're talking about saving the tool. We've got one of these. It's a pulley wrench of some sort. I could go back and look. If you're curious about it, ask in the comments down below and I'll look it up and I'll post a link to it on Amazon. Now, I had to file these down right here to get them to where they would fit into the holes on the cup wheel, but it's adjustable, so you can slide it in there, push a lock on the back, and then just break it loose. Since we've started doing this, we've had a lot less issues with bearings going out on the grinders. We had to learn this too. Now for our bonus secret. Overheating and overworking the grinder because you're covering the exhaust port. What exhaust port? That one right there. All of this metal that's at the front, at the head of the grinder. This is all going to be dissipating heat the whole time you're using it. As the motor's spinning around and whirling around, it's blowing out all the hot air to get it off of that motor. How many of you guys out there are like, man, when I go to grind, I need a glove? Or you've got somebody that says, I need a glove on, the grinder gets too hot. It's because when you're working with the grinder, you're holding it right here. This is going to be just like putting a blanket over the front of your truck while you're driving. The radiator can't even work because you're not allowing the air to get to it. So this is trying to dissipate heat. It needs to blow the heat out. So covering this up, bad. Don't do it. All of that heat generated is going to be excessively hard on the electric motor. It's going to be hard on the bearings and the lubrication between the bearings. And you're going to see bearings going out, and you're just going to see they're just going to stop working. You're going to get out there, you'll be using a grinder on the job, it'll get excessively hot, and then you're gonna pull the trigger for it to work, and it's just gonna stop working in the middle of the job, and you're like, this grinder sucks. It doesn't mean that the grinder sucks if it can't take the abuse that we're giving to them. So instead, all I ask is that you hold it somewhere else. Now, one of the things, there are different mounts, different handles that you can get that come up and elevate above so that you can hold it here. What my guys like to do is they put this handle in up top and they actually hold it across the top, just like that. You're not blocking the heat that's being exhausted off the top of it. You're just right across the top. You're still getting your stabilization. The amount of times that I see pictures in content of people grinding that have it covered, I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I have to pay attention to it too, but usually my key indicator is as soon as my hand starts getting warm, I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? Get it out of the way and go back to work. Go look at this YouTube channel and look at the cover picture up top. I noticed my hand's in the wrong place in that photo because I was just getting started grinding. So try to break the habit, save your grinders. Last but not least, I told you guys that I would give you an extra tip that would help you save money. This may seem pretty obvious, but all of the manufacturers have warranty and repair facilities. The amount of people that I've seen that once a tool breaks, they're like, I'm just gonna throw it away, done with it, I'll just go get another one. I know specifically every time I've worked with Metabo, we don't have a repair facility that was really close, so we package them up and we send them off to the manufacturer to get fixed. When we do this, I've been really surprised at how many times the repairs are covered under warranty. Worst case scenario, they're not covered under warranty, and if they're not, it costs less to get them fixed than it does to buy a new grinder. At least from my experience with Metabo, whenever they send you the fixed grinder, you're basically getting a refurbished grinder. So the plastic looks new, the cords look new, it's completely clean. It almost looks like you're opening up the same box that you would have gotten if you had gone to the store to purchase it. And most of the time, it ends up being about half the price of what we would spend on a brand new grinder. So since we've started utilizing all of these tips, all these tricks, our grinders have been lasting tremendously longer, as well as our cost for how much we're having to put out towards 7-inch grinders per year has gone tremendously down. Plus, it's a whole lot less aggravating when you don't have to deal with tools breaking on the job all the time. If you've seen any of the ways that you or somebody else has messed up a grinder that I didn't talk about that people should look out for, I would love to hear about it in the comments. We've all screwed up tools. Also, please share this with anybody that you think it could help. We all know somebody that could use a little help taking care of tools. And if you got any value out of this, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. They're free, trust me. If you push them, nobody's gonna bite you. They really help us out and continue the growth so we can keep making more content. And whether or not this is your first time with us or you've been here before, check out one of these and come see how we do things on the job. We're just hanging out, having fun, and getting concrete coated. We'll see you over there.